and welcome in yet another amazing episode about Honda CRF300L. As you have seen, there is 1.5 degrees Celsius, which means it's riding time. So what I want to do, I want to take my Honda on yet another small trip, but before I have to do some fixing because I broke my exhaust bracket, the middle pipe bracket that goes into the frame right here. It's broken. I guess it broke off from the vibration because it broke straight on the weld, so we're gonna have to weld it. Also, I have some fault codes, but that's my fault because I was disconnecting the sensors while the engine was running, and now I have a fail code which needs to be deleted. And most importantly, I have to change the front wheel bearing because they broke. Why? I don't know. Maybe too many hard landings from a wheelie. As you can see, I have a street-oriented tires on my bike. They are Mitas MC24. What I can tell you about them, dry road, sunny weather, nice weather, they're okay. They're very nice on the asphalt, you can really trust them. Off-road, well, I cannot say too much about it because I wasn't off-roading with those tires. Obviously, I use them on the road. They don't look very promising. They're probably not good in a hard terrain. I'm guessing gravel roads and side roads, you will be fine. But what I can tell you about them, it's wet condition, rain on an asphalt condition, disaster. The back, it's spinning like crazy on every single gear without even me wanting it. I just give a throttle and the rear wheel slips. And if you're in a roundabout or in a sharp corner, don't even think about touching this or that, because you're gonna lock the wheel. I will lock the wheel because I have no ABS. But if you touch that one, doesn't matter what gear you're on, this tire will slip. I have no idea why. The same on the front. The front is running like hell as soon as you touch the brake in any type of corner. I don't know if it's just the tire I have, or is this Mitas MC24 so bad on the rain? The rubber is kind of hard. They're not very old. They're 2019. The wet conditions, I'm scared. I'm scared. Today it's 1.5, 2 degrees. It's very nice sunny weather, so I'm gonna go take a small trip. But let me fix the things that needs to be fixed first, and then off we go. So if you have original Honda CRF300L, your plug is gonna be hidden down there, your diagnostic plug. Mine is here. I pushed it back here because there is nothing there, so I just moved it. And now to read and delete the fault codes, I don't actually need to use my Hiltech program on a laptop. I can use the VR800 simple OBD2 reader. All you need is a Honda 6-pin plug. I hope you can see it, how it looks. And then a switch to OBD, and we're good to go. All you need to do is plug the plug into the plug, just like that, and then turn on the ignition. And I will show you very quickly how simple this is and how simple this works. OBD2 EOBD, yes. Connecting the module is 18 DFA 110, yes. Read the codes, generic. You can choose different brands, but I don't think there is a Honda here, but it's still just a simple. Oh, there is a Honda. Oh, and that's the codes we have. We have a P1000, P018, P0122, P013, P018, and now you can go into every single one of them and see what they mean. P108 is some kind of pressure in the exhaust. P122 is a TPS sensor actually. I disconnect that one. 113 is a temperature sensor, the outside temperature sensor, and the P118 is coolant temperature too high, yes. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna delete those. It's deleting, and there you go, deleted. So all you have to do now, as you can see, there is no fault code lamp anymore. Shut down, disconnect your plug, and you're good to go. A very nice tool if you just need to read and delete the codes. It turns out that the places to weld more or less matches the original places, which means it was just bad welds, maybe not so much tension in the exhaust as I was thinking. I guess the welds have been just very, very gentle and not deep enough. They didn't went into the metal deep enough to be strong. So let me just weld it. If you have to spot weld on your bike or you have to weld something on your bike, remember to disconnect the battery and disconnect as much electronic as possible. The electronics might not like the voltage from the welding machine. And if you do a gas welding, remove your gasoline. Don't ask me how I know. So here is where the bracket broke off, as you can see, right on a weld. I'm gonna put this, we're gonna clean this first, put it back on and try to weld it with my MIG. I just ran out of gas. I don't have argon mix anymore. Oh Jesus, no welding without argon mix. No welding without gas. Well, I guess a trip to the shop is necessary to get new gas. We're gonna take my favorite car to go to the shop and buy a new gas for the welding. No, it's not that one, it's that one over there. Before I went to the shop, I almost forgot I also have to change the bearings in the front wheel because they're dead. As you have seen, I took the wheel off just to check what type of bearings I have in the wheel because I didn't remember. I want to check now if I have them on shelf somewhere. But small tip, when you remove the bearing and you check, not on all bikes, not many bikes have different bearings, but some do. I've seen it enough to be aware of that. Check the bearings on both sides of your hub, because sometimes, especially on the back wheel, there are 2 or even 3 different types of bearing. This Honda have 2, the same bearings, 6003, 2RS. 2RS it means that they sealed with the plastic cap from both sides and the grease is inside. But check on both sides. Now in most of the modern motorcycles, wheels, there are 2 bearings in the hub with the spacer between them. What the spacer does is keeping the proper distance between the bearings, not allowing them to get squeezed by the axle or swing arm or the forks when you mount the wheel. Now listen to me carefully. If you have a motorcycle and you're a fan of bikes and you want to do some work yourself on your own bike, it's absolutely okay to punch the spacer a little bit to the side so it exposes the inner side of the bearing, then flip the wheel and then punch the bearing out and then punch the other one after the spacer is out. Different sizes, different lengths, different hubs, different bearings. It's absolutely okay for you to use that kind of technique on your own bike, on your friend's bike, no problem. You will scratch the spacer a little bit, you will damage it, especially if it's aluminum like on the cross and enduro bikes. If it's steel, it's going to get less damage, but still you're going to make scratches and damages on it. Which is not nice, but it's okay to try it yourself, do it yourself. It's not that hard of a job. But if you want to be a mechanic, if you want your customers to have a trust in you, that you don't do bullshit like this, that you're not punching the bearing out, I'm sorry, but you have to invest in some kind of puller. Very simple, very cheap bearing puller. You put it in, you grab the bearing from the behind, from the inside. This is too big, probably we're gonna have to use this one, or even the smaller one. Yes, like that. You grab the bearing and you drag it out. You punch it out with a punch like this, or there are special holders like this that can pull it up. There are different tools for that. There are very cheap tools, there are very expensive tools. Find your own tool. If you want to do this properly, if you want to do this so you can be proud of your work, and if most importantly, if you want your customers and people who come to you for help and you take money for it like I do, because that's what I do, that's how I work. This is my bike, so not that, but any other bike. I use the tools that are designed to do the job. I finished doing monkey business like that long time ago. I can still do it on my own bike, but I don't, because this is much easier. Investment in a tool like this, especially if you want to be taken seriously and have a workshop, tool like that. Like I said, if it's your bike, your friend bike, you're helping someone, if you don't have that tool or you cannot afford it or whatever, it's absolutely okay to punch the spacer to the side and punch them out with the hammers and chisels. But if you want to be taken seriously, get yourself a proper tools. So the tool like this is super simple. You find a tool, they 17, 15, 12, 20, 25, 23, whatever the sizes. Most common sizes of the bearings, they're not all from Mars. You have to make sure it's loose so it doesn't put the pressure on those four arms. Squeeze that in. And you push it down until you feel that it reaches the bottom of the bearing. You will feel it. There, here it is. This one is 19, and now, if it sits quite well, don't screw too much, don't go crazy on it, like 8 turns. 90 degrees, that's it, that's all you need. And now there are different ways, there are plates with the screws to drag it up and push it and pull it. Mine is very simple. Punch tool, you just simply screw it in. And all you do, you just hold your hand on the wheel so it doesn't jump and punch it. And there you go, the bearing is out, 4 punches. And now you can remove your spacer and it's nice and not damaged, not scratched, not whatever. Now, if you still want to punch it, you can punch the other one, but I'm tired of punching bearings like a monkey. So what I do, I just remove the old bearing from the tool. And what you do, you put it in, just like that. Again, squeeze it, not too much. 90 degrees is enough. You don't have to make 5 turns. Grab the bearing and just punch it. 2 punches and it's out. And what we discovered on the Honda CRF300L, they're actually not 2RS, which means they're not sealed on both sides. Saving money, Honda, eh? That's why Honda CRF is a budget bike. That's why it's so cheap. They assume that the seal on that side and the other bearing will do the work. It will work if you put some kind of sealant and glue around the bearing, between the bearing and the hub, and then between the axle and the bearing. But they don't, nobody does that, so water gets in and the water gets around you can even see it, it's wet. I was driving in the water. The water gets in, there is no seal on the other side of the bearing, and that's why you have a damaged bearing after you drive in the water. We're gonna change them to 2RS, which are sealed on both sides, and then you can have as much water as you want inside. We're also gonna put lots of lube on that, so when the water gets in, this one, it's protected with the grease and it's not gonna corrode. I don't have those bearings, so I have to go to the shop. So like I said, if you do this once or twice on your own bike, just do with the old method. But if you want to make money of that and you want your customer to trust you and be happy with you, get some kind of tool. It's really not that expensive. I think this tool cost me like 2,000 Norwegian kroner, which is I'm guessing not even $200. And this tool is made by what else you expect? Now when it comes to seals, if they damaged or if they go out really hard and you bend them and you damage them, then you have to replace them. I will not replace them because they're not very bad. I'm gonna clean them, wash them, and then I'm gonna pack them with a nice fresh new grease, and they're gonna do their job just fine, which is keeping the environment out of inside of the hub. Did you know that if you remove all the seam rings on your bike, absolutely all, on the wheels, on the engine, on the swing arm, on the suspension, everywhere, you're gonna gain 1 horsepower. While I'm here on this side, I'm gonna check the air filter, probably gonna change it. This is how the air filter looks like in Norway after about, this one is I think this one is 3,000 kilometers old. They're so cheap, I don't even bother to wash it. Just gonna pop the new one. But before I mount this one, I'm gonna soak it into the air filter oil. There are different types of oils. Some are in the bottles. You can pour it into like a bag or bucket and soak it. I'm using this one, air filter spray. You have to remember that it freezes because of the change of the pressure. It also changes the temperature. So you just spray it all over your filter. Just like that, on the both sides. I have to wait because it's frozen, so I have to wait a little bit, and obviously those gloves are going to be garbage after, and because it's a spongy fungi, you just press it in. Make sure it's all over, and when it gets warm it will open up nicely and go back to its shape, just like that. Yes. And now when you squeeze it and it's not leaking because that would be too much, now just wait for the sponge to go back to its shape. Actually, I have this plastic form that the filter sits in. I can put it in first and put the other side. Oh, actually I put it the wrong way. It will grow to its proper size, and then it will fill this little box. This is a very nice cage. Yeah, just pop it back in and that's it. Now I got myself 2 new bearings and we're gonna put them in now. When it comes to putting in the bearings, there are many different ways to do it. You can start with the very simple way to do it, which is get a new bearing, clean this one, clean the bearing, put it on, gently start it on the edges, like that, not like that, on the edges. And then when the bearing is more or less in, you can use the old bearing also on the edges to drive the new one in. If it needs to go deep, then you cannot use that one because it's going to be stuck after. What you're going to do then is what most people do, use the socket. Also remember, the sockets are not perfectly flat, so just make sure it matches the edge of the bearing. I took the foil off so you can see better. Just make sure for example, this one is too small. If it's going to be too big, it won't go in. So you have to find the perfect one so the edges match, just like that. and then you can go. Now I've seen people start with the hammer around, and when the bearing is flat in the hub, they even use that one and go around it. It's very risky, you have to really know what you're doing, but it's possible. If that's the only choice, it's possible. Again, me making money of that, I have to have a tool. So I got myself a tool like this, all different sizes. They're very thick, so they don't warp when you punch them or press them. Now, how to put the bearing in? There are many different ways as well. You can freeze the bearing and heat up the hub, which I'm not going to do because this also comes with experience. I know this is a Honda, and I know the tolerances are quite loose on the Honda. If it would be a bearing in a, for example, a gearbox inside the BMW engine, I will definitely freeze the bearing and heat up the hell out of this engine block that I'm going to push the bearing in, because from the experience I know they kind of tight. So it depends if you're doing this just once on your own bike or for a friend, or you want to have a workshop and you're going to work with the tools. Get yourself a tool. Now you can punch it with a hammer, you can press it on the press if you have a press big enough, or if the part you're working on is small enough to fit in the small press. You can even use a funny tool like this. This is a very simple tool. It's actually used for the bearing for the bicycles. It has different sizes and a big bolt with 2 nuts on the ends, and you squeeze the bearing inside if you have to put 2 bearings at once, or you can put 1. You can use that. You can use that tools to make that, because they have a hole in it. You can put a bolt and a big nut with a big washer. Oopsie daisy. So yeah, there are different ways. The way I'm doing it is first of all the safest way, because I don't want to damage parts of the bike on my customers' bikes and on whatever I'm working on. Because here in Norway they don't play around. You break it, you have to fix it. You buy a new one. Nobody wants to have a scratch or a crack on the hub or an engine block or wherever. Nobody wants to have any damage. So I know the most important for me is the safety of the work, that I'm doing the work properly and it's safely put in and sits as it's supposed to sit. So that's why I have that tool and many different tools. But like I said, this is Honda. I know I don't have to heat this one up very much. I will still heat it up with a small electric heat gun, but I'm not going to freeze the bearing because it's kind of cold, and they cold just from the box. So before we punch the bearing in, clean the hub. Brake cleaner, gasoline on the paper, on the stuff, and you have to make sure it's nice and clean inside and on the edges and outside as well, so none of the dust goes in, because the dust is your enemy. When it comes to tight tolerances, any little speck of dust can create big problems, especially if it's metal. So this one is clean now. Normally you can put some wood under the wheel, but this is a special plate made of like a PVC plastic, so I made it just so I can work on it with the hammer, and all the punching things are very nicely absorbed into this plastic. So now I'm going to heat up this a little bit with the heat gun. So 35 is the perfect size for the bearing, but I know it will get stuck in the hub, but it's easy to punch out because it's actually smaller than the hole in the bearing. Get your tools ready, because you need to do this kind of quick. We start with the bearing outside. Already in, then our 35 driver, and just to make sure it goes straight, I'm going to use the punch. You punch and you wait for the change of the sound. The last 3 punches you can definitely hear different sound. As I said, this one's gonna get stuck. All you have to do is flip the wheel, punch the tool out, make sure you're not punching the bearing. There you go, there's our tool. And gonna use that again on the other side. Again, clean it up. Honda is quite loose when it comes to the tolerances, which does not mean that they are bad. Sometimes that actually help. The spacer, never forget that one. You're gonna have to get yourself another bearing set. Clean it very nicely, and then put the grease. But remember, the grease is just a thin layer to prevent the corrosion in case moisture gets in. Most important is to make it clean inside and outside. There you go. Now we're going to lube it and drop it in. Nice. And now just visually inspect that the spacer is not higher than the hub, so you're not going to damage anything. It's impossible. I mean, on most of the bikes it's impossible because the bearing stops on the hub. The hub is machined to the right spec, so it's impossible for the bearing to go any deeper. But just make sure, just look. So you see the spacer is flat with the hub. That's how you know everything is okay. The bearing is not too deep, not too shallow. On some wheels, very old motorcycles I've seen, there is no shelf that the bearing can rest on inside the hub, so they can actually go all the way through. And then you have to kind of choose where they're going to go, and then it's hauled from outside with the sort of a ring. So yeah, but that's on a different episode. Heat it up a little. Here we go. Like I said, Honda almost went with my fingers. I'm gonna punch it anyway, just to make sure I get the sound change. That's it. The first one pushed it all the way in, and now we know it's okay. Just gonna have to push out the tool, punch it, and there you go. What you can check now with your fingers, put your finger in and make sure that both bearings are spinning freely and that the spacer between them is not loose, like moving 2 or 3 millimeters. It's not, so it's okay. What I like to do now before I put the seam rings on, I like to put the original axle from the bike and spin the wheel while I'm holding the axle in my hands, because that multiplies all the kind of feelings that comes from the bearings, and you can very clearly feel if there's the smallest damage, which you might not feel in the bearing itself. If you put the axle and spin the whole wheel on it, you will feel it in your hands. So what I like to do is put the original axle into the wheel, and then spin it and hold it and not move, and then you can feel it on the axle. If there is anything wrong with your bearings, you're going to feel it immediately. Nothing. If there is anything wrong with the bearing, you punched it while you pushed it in, or it was bad from the factory, which is impossible if you buy proper bearings. Those ones are NTN made in Taiwan. Very good bearings. Oh, this one goes perfectly. Absolutely nothing. When I'm closing my eyes, I don't even know that the wheel is spinning. That's perfect. Now I can balance the wheel, because I'm pretty sure I lost some weight when I was driving the water, and I also felt some vibration, so I'm pretty sure it was a little bit out of balance. I'm also going to balance it without the seam ring, because they just create friction, and it's much easier without them. Well, I guess there was something else vibrating. Maybe it's just the tire itself, kind of worn. Some bikes have one spacer, some bikes have two, some bikes have more, or some bikes have none because they have a shaft that goes and works as a spacer on one side, and on the other side they have this snail for the speedometer. But clean those spacers, put the simmering back on. The simmering are here, washed and packed with the new grease, not too much, nothing crazy. And then we're going to put the wheel back on. Clean the axle, make sure there is no corrosion on it or damages. Put some thin layer of grease and back in. So that's it, bike is ready, new filter, welded exhaust, new bearing in the front wheel. Let's go. So welcome in another segment of gas talks. I decided that instead of eating on a gas station, we're gonna come up here. It's very close. The gas station is just down there. Maybe you can see it. And also I decided instead of hot dogs, hamburgers today, because they made from local wild meat. So they're very good. And since nobody loves me and nobody asks any questions for future gas talks, I'm just gonna brag about how good CRF300L is. Well, it's really good. But I must say, I do want to try CRF450RL. I don't know why, something tells me I'm gonna like it even more than this one. I'm completely not bothered by the service schedule on a 450. I don't care, I can open this engine every single weekend. But when it comes to CRF300L, it's a really fun bike, really good bike. There's still some small mods I need to do in order to make it as I want it, but it's pretty close. When it comes to power and the capacity and the performance of that bike, I think it's more than enough for Norwegian side roads. I'm not talking about highways, of course, and European highways, but I'm talking about the small roads like we're driving today. Now we're going to follow the road on this lake, and then we're going to go left, and there's some more bigger lakes. You're going to see it all. So in general, for the Norwegian conditions, the speed limits, the roads, how twisty and how narrow they are, and how people behave on the road, how they drive. 300cc, well, 286 and around 30 horsepower is enough to overtake everybody here. You don't need 1000cc here, you don't need 200 horsepower. If you look ahead, where on this picture you can use 200 horsepower? Where on this picture you can go 300, 250, 200 even? There's no chance. That's why the CRF300L, 250L, doesn't matter. And all the bikes in that range of capacity and power are perfect here. But like I said, I really wish to at least try for one day, CRF 450, and miss that little bit of kick. So the next bike will be definitely 450 RL. I'm not going to sell that one ever. This is the best bike ever. This is the greatest motorcycle on the planet. I'm never going to get rid of it. It's very close to being perfect. I'm going to do some small modifications and then it will be perfect. But I still want to try 450 RL. If anybody have 450 RL and wants to trade and wants to change the bikes for a weekend, hit me up. Aloe vera, what the? So since nobody asking any questions and nobody wants to know anything, let's look at the view a little bit more. Let's finish the burger, and then that's the road we're gonna go all the way up there. See you soon. that's it. It's one of the last of beautiful day like this before the winter comes. The CRF is a very good travel companion for long and short trips. I hope you enjoyed that episode, and as always, see you in the next one.